All right, we are back. We are now working on mining productivity 95. And yeah, I think we've done it though. I think we have really finally finished the base and yeah, if we look at the last 10 hours, we got just really nice and smooth 3,000 signs per minute being produced, being consumed. No interruptions, really. There's like always like some slight wiggles, but just sometimes these last little labs don't have some space science for a little bit of time, but it's not really a big deal. And I think even as we just let the base continue to progress, that will happen less and less often. And so yeah, let's just be happy we did it. The base is really done, and we really got the full 3,000 signs per minute. Really pushing the cars on belts mechanics to the max. So maybe I'll just go through the whole production chain one last time, and yeah, we can admire the base together, and this will then conclude the playthrough. So maybe we'll do it backwards, and of course we have here then the main base, and this is where like all the science has been built, and we eventually turned our what was once a kind of main bus, kind of using the cars and belts. We've turned it into this I don't know, like a what is this called, a heat exchanger thing where the cars snake through all of these production buildings, and basically we have it broken up into two halves, and just go through all of the science production through both halves, and use these amazing train intersections to bring in the resources. So then there's a couple of, like, there's a primary build where we have just the production buildings kind of right next to each other, and these like inserters that are kind of pointing off to this side, but that can very easily reach into the car's inventory. And so this is our primary standard build for most of the production. And then if we look at sort of the production that requires fluids, there's a bit of a different style, since you need quite a bit of room to have the pipes, but basically we're still having these builds where the buildings are touched by 8 beacons. So there's the 4 across and then 4 around it, and then there's a bit of room for a pipe to bring in the fluids. And then, of course, you can do it with the chemical plants as well. This is so then the kind of standard build for the items with fluids in them. And then there's a couple other builds where basically the issue is the inserter throughput becomes a limiting factor. So something like Rails requires, more inputs than a single inserter can handle, and so one solution to this is to have a second building producing one of the items, and then you get the extra throughput for the iron sticks. So like this inserter doesn't have to deal with the iron sticks anymore, and then this can be enough to satisfy these really high throughput builds, and so the normal yellow inserters is also I think another example of that, where oh wow, the icons changed. Where the adding this extra inserter throughput allows it to work more effectively. And similarly for the green circuits, we have the same theme of needing extra inserters to deal with the throughput, but having this build like this allows you to deal with that. So then the resources for the base are then mainly built by these external kind of, again, cars on belts systems. we have the trains bringing in all the raw resources into these smelters, and so then again we have a very similar design for the iron smelter, and then we have these amazing like train junctions that allow us to do huge amounts of throughput onto and from the cars. So yeah, this like one iron smelter is designed to do 1,800 plates and takes in 1,500 ore per second. So more or less, this is 40 blue belts and 36 blue belts in, so 70 something blue belts of inputs and outputs going into this smelter. So you can imagine like trying to deal with those belt logistics, but instead, yeah, like because of the amazing throughput you get from these cars on belts junctions, you can make these really, really compact train stations and just get a ton of items on and off this like gigantic smelter array. And then of course the trains are really like one of the things I'm most proud of in this build, and like one of my favorite parts of Factorio is the trains. And so like built this like pretty intricate station to really maximize the train throughput so that trains can be ready to get in and out as fast as possible into these loading stations, because really like the bottleneck is basically the trains just getting in and out. And so so like just making that as fast as possible was the goal, and so having these kind of like stackers before the stations was a big factor in really speeding that up. And so this allows the trains to like get into position to load, and also make sure that they have a space to wait when they're done, and that way they can spend some time dealing with the junction and getting in and out without like slowing down the pace at which they can go into and out of the main station. And so then the trains disperse through this hexagonal grid network, and really it's just defined by this one really nice three-way junction. When you build these train networks, you really got to think about where the trains are going to stop, and to make sure that when they do stop, they're not blocking anything. And another good thing is to give them the option to go around each other when they do stop. So like one of the key things is like, say, if a train is waiting here for like another train to cross, then it will block off this entire block. And so then it's nice to have this sort of option. So so the next train coming, if there's a train waiting here, it will wait over here before this split. And then if it wants to go straight, it has actually the opportunity to just go around the train waiting to go left. And so this gives it the option to just go around the traffic. And so that's like why this four-way junction is so good, because the trains can kind of make decisions to go around each other and keep the traffic flowing. And there's always also a slot kind of for the train before and after every junction to make sure that like the trains never cause any backlogs or roadblocks, and there's always like the ability for the traffic to clear the intersection. Then we also have power-wise this amazing nuclear power plant. I originally thought that this 60 reactor nuclear power plant would carry us through the entire game, but it really only gives us like 2/3 of our power, I think. So yeah, it looks like our steady state is about 16.2 gigs of power, and I think the nuclear plant does slightly under 10, so a little bit more than half. And then the rest we get from all the solar panels that we built all over the place. And so then the solar panels are then adding the last bit of power. And then I guess there is some from here still technically. The old oil refinery power plant is still going, but this is only 300 megawatts out of the 16 gigawatts, so not very significant. We have besides, so then we have two of these iron smelters, two of the copper smelters. We have a big steel smelter that's even larger than the iron smelters. And so like, yeah, we need this much steel, but just we built one of them because, yeah, it wasn't like quite twice as much as this, but because it's steel, it's also way denser and you can put way more on the cars, and so it's like plenty of ability to get all this throughput and build even bigger smelter for the steel. And then we also have externally built these green and red circuit builds. So yeah, like I was saying before, the green circuits have, inserter throughput issues, so we just directly insert the copper cable, and that makes it pretty effective. Of course, like it's not quite as dense because of like the spacing caused by these inserters, and still we need them to align with the beacons so that there's always still 8 beacons touching all the buildings. So that's why there's kind of like a double space between these. And yeah, so this is like, I think, way overbuilt to what we need for the final science, but hey, there's no problem with having too much. And of course, a lot of the green circuits and such were useful for building extra modules and solar panels. So it's what didn't hurt to have the extra production. And then similarly, we have a mega scale production for red circuits, but this is just following the standard layout format, and just having the copper cables on the cars and building the red circuits, and so then can easily get in the resources. And then so then the trains all kind of have these very simple schedules where the provider stations will set the train limit based on the capacity, and then similarly the requester stations will call for trains based on how much items are needed, which creates this nice way of doing this many-to-many train network and keeping things going in the right places. And also what's nice when you have these many-to-many train networks is to give the trains a place to go to kind of park. So usually after a train fills up with cargo, it just waits at one of these parking spots until it gets requested, and so that way, so hopefully we have enough supply, and then when a train is kind of ready to provide to the base, it just sits here and waits until it's needed, and that way, the trains aren't in the way and have nowhere to go, so they just kind of chill in the parking spots. And finally then, the trains will come into the main base and drop off all their resources. And so the main base has the 2 stations, and both sides of the stations pull in steel, iron, green circuits, and copper. And then on one half we get some extra plastic that we need for the low density structures, and the other half we get all of the red circuits that we need. And so then we slightly couldn't quite supply enough red circuits because of the balancer situation, so we added this extra supply to top off the red circuits, but a little bit hacky, but I think it's perfectly acceptable in the end. And then, if we just look at the mines, there's a couple of standard mining builds, typically just like plopping down some, normal things and belting lines into the train stations. Tried out this Neil House version. Maybe it was like slightly faster, but not really like super big deal either way of doing it. Most of the mines are still just going because there's so much mining productivity. And eventually we built these more high throughput direct to train mines. So here now there's like a couple of these in action where we are directly mining into the trains instead of onto belts. And actually this is, at this point, because we have so much mining productivity, we're getting 273. So what's that, six blue belts of throughput just from each of these stations. So yeah, each of these trains is just like loading on 6 blue belts of rate. So that's pretty good, pretty fast. So there's tons of throughput. Obviously, it doesn't cover all the mines. And the other kind of issue is that it's just, I mean, maybe this is something to look into later, but one thing that happens is, of course, like sometimes, the miners run out, right? And so this station is basically useless. And before there was a train just forever stuck here. So you just have to watch out for the station. Once some of the miners run out, the station kind of needs to just be manually turned off. But maybe there's a more automated way of doing that. I just never invested in that. So then we just gather all the raw resources of iron and copper and stone and bring them to the various smelters. And the other build we have are these 3 kind of oil builds. They're all identical, where we produce all the oil products, plastic and sulfur and sulfuric acid. And you could build a cars on belts plastic build, but it's mostly the oil. It's like the petroleum gas throughput becomes quickly an issue, and also it's one of those things that's also like has a lot of inserter bottlenecks, because each of these buildings does indeed produce quite a bit of plastic when fully beaconed, and it's hard for it to keep up with the cars. So like doing the kind of standard build for plastic, I think was was the one thing that didn't really work out. So we just went back to I just decided to just put the plastic next to the oil, since it's mostly the petroleum gas throughput, and just do the standard kind of belt bus with the cars. So I still think this is like more convenient to do in terms of logistics, right? So there's like still 8 lanes of plastic and 4 lanes of coal, some iron and some sulfur coming off, all like needing to get organized in these train stations. So still like doing the cars, I think, was actually more convenient. And then we have these huge oil builds. I think each of these rows can do like 3,000 oil per second. And so, I mean, each one does 1,000, so 3,000 in total. And so then it's very important to like understand how to do the fluids and do the fluid throughput correctly. So like usually, there's no need to have more than 1 pump per wagon, because the pumps themselves, if you set them up the right way, they can transfer like 12,000 fluid per second, right? So you can get 12,000 fluid per second just off of each wagon. So that's quite fast. And then if you hook the pumps up directly, pump to tank or pump to pump, then you can get much higher throughput than just like through pipes. So then what happens here is we get a ton of oil off the train. It pushes it through until it gets saturated. And right now we're just pushing it through at like kind of the 2,000 to 3,000 rate, is because that's what's just being consumed. And then just make this long chain of pumps and tanks, and this whole chain can sustain like 12,000 per second because there's no pipes. And so as long as that's the case, you can get like a ton of throughput. And then basically I'm splitting that up here, so that way we can build the undergrounds. And then if you do sort of like 1, 2, 3, or 4 or so pipe segments between, or maybe even 6 pipe segments between a pump, you can get well over 1,000 throughput. So then we're just pumping down the oil spreading it out into these 3 different builds and easily getting all 3,000 oil through. So yeah, if we look at like this one, well, no, it's still just going at 3,000. But yeah, like for a second, they go like way faster. And then yeah, so then we also just bring in some iron plate and put it on the cars, and make sulfur and sulfuric acid as well here. And just again have these fluid stations for all the fluids. And then finally, yeah, the fluids come in these middle stations and just directly feed into the fluid builds to provide the fluids. Then we've also like kind of just brought in some lubricant over here to feed the main base and to feed this some sulfuric acid over here to feed this uranium mine. I mean the main hub. And then finally also then we bring in the little bit of sulfur we need, some coal and stone, do a lot of the stone processing over here and put stone onto the cars and the sulfur. Then a bit of it over here as well. We need the extra stone and coal over here to supply the production science and the military science. And so then, yeah, this brings in all the resources into the base. And then finally, I guess I'll like go over again the logistics hub. So the logistics hub also has a cars on belts system. And so we basically just pull off whatever resources from the main line that we need. And then bring it into the logistics cars on belts. And those ones have filters for all of the basic items, and they sort of act like the logistics spots would act. Then we go through this maze of production buildings, bringing in the resources and putting on all the basic items. And then the logistics cars also go and feed these various logistics trains. So we have trains for the nuclear power, the wall train looks like it's out giving ammo to the walls. Then this was the train for helping us produce the mega builds. And this is sort of the expansion and mining train that helped us build mines, build the rail network, build solar panels. And they all are controlled by these like kind of fancy logistics systems where we just set the items we want into these combinators, and all this circuit logic basically pulls the items off of these chests and just puts them onto the trains like kind of haphazardly, which I kind of love actually. And it's been really actually easy to do and use and change the filters, and it's great to see the trains kind of like be so like all over the place. Because normally I would just like always be setting the filters and be very neat, but I kind of like this. And then yeah, we have this kind of train launcher system too. So like when we want to add trains, we just plop down our kind of train launcher blueprint, and then we have all the standard schedules laid out right here. So it's very easy to just like copy and paste the schedules onto the trains and send them off. Yeah, we have almost 300 trains running around feeding the base. So maybe not quite that many, but yeah, that's pretty awesome to see. Just 300 trains or so running around everywhere. And yeah, then there's also the recycling train, which goes out to the various mining stations, which all have these like recycling depots. So whenever the bots kind of bring stuff into these storage chests, then it will call the recycle train, and this will bring back like the wood and coal mainly, and whatever else we want to pick up, and then I kind of made this little loop to try to organize it and return the resources to the base. So some things just are stuck in here forever, but you know, it's not really a big deal. The excess wood and coal get pulled off here, and if there's too much of it, it gets sent to this power plant to just get burned off and destroyed. And then we have all these other inserters and chests trying to pull off the items that we might want to recycle, and just put them into these chests. And then if they can go back onto the logistics cars, that's great. If not, then you know, they're just available into the logistics network, and can use them and organize them. And yeah, and then I think that basically wraps it up. There's like this other little part of the base, I guess, that does the last kind of logistics stuff. This is like definitely the most spaghetti part of the base. And so like, yeah, very conveniently, actually, this uranium mine was like kind of right here. And so I was normally going to just have this train bring in raw uranium, but never had to do that at all. Just this one, you know, this 1/2 of one patch has more than lasted us the entire game. And so then we've just been doing the uranium processing, and we used a lot of uranium ammo. So building the uranium ammo here and putting it onto the cars, which eventually brings it onto the wall train. So that's been our primary defensive tool. So yeah, all of our walls are just basically made out of gun turrets with uranium ammo, and I think it's more than sufficient. I don't ever really need flamethrower turrets or anything like that. Uranium ammo is just extremely powerful, and at this point we have also all these ammo upgrades that just, you know, make it completely vaporize the biters. And yeah, I haven't heard a warning sound in so long. It's been great. And then we also do the kind of standard nuclear processing stuff: Kovarex, nuclear fuel, uranium fuel cells, some atomic bombs snaked in here. And did some like very spaghetti moving around the explosives and bringing in RCUs and all this. So got like many of the major weapons things going. Have this build for just building silly amounts of cars, and you know, we needed this train here that just carries cars around. And when we were building all these mega scale buildings, we would, you know, need like 4 train loads of cars to come fill up the fill up the kind of bus with cars. So that was useful. And we also then just like have this explosives builds that allows us to build some artillery and some, you know, explosive cannon shells. We used that for tanks a long time ago, and all the artillery for clearing biters, and then I somehow squeezed in also a build for rockets, and the rockets are just for our Spidertrons. Yeah, where are our Spidertrons? So yeah, we had some Spidertrons out here. Yep, there's our Spidertron army, just chilling, not having anything to do, but they would go around and clean up some biters for us. They've also been very useful in building actually the rail network. I think this was actually a pretty nice way of expanding and building new bunkers instead of trying to like use the bots. The Spidertrons were pretty nice at actually expanding for us. And yeah, then I think that covers pretty much everything with the base. And I really, yeah, we're like basically, let's do one of these. Woo! Party time. Oh yeah. Can't even like put these down evenly. Oh man. But yeah, then I think this is it. This concludes the playthrough, and we see how I think overpowered cars and belts can be, and just how silly the builds can be, and like, yeah, you can really build a megabase. Our UPS isn't the best. It's definitely not the most UPS efficient kind of build for building a megabase, but it's still like just really fun way to play the game and do something where the developers totally intended for this mechanic to be in the game, and but I don't think they really ever thought that you would use this cars on belts mechanic like it's to such an extreme extent that it'd kind of be this overpowered logistical system. And yeah, so cool. Well, thanks for following along with the playthrough, and thanks to a lot of people on Reddit for even helping me with new ideas, and of course to a lot of the other Factorio streamers and community for again, the great community and the great collaborations, and there's so many ideas that I've been building upon from other people, and I wanted to just create this playthrough to share my experience with Factorio and everything I've learned, especially with how much time I've put into really maximizing the cars on belts mechanics, and building this space, sort of my ode to Factorio. And it's nice to see one last time that we've got the full 3000 science going, and I think it's just gonna hum along forever. And if we look backwards over the last, I think I'm at like a couple hundred hours of playthrough. So, but we see how we had a couple of blips early on. This was to the RCUs, and then we had this blue circuit blip, but I think we solved those bottlenecks, and now it looks like we're sitting pretty. 3000 science per minute, Factorio cars on belts, carb use space. There you go, Factorio unpacks, and we'll see what happens next. Maybe I will do a playthrough of SpaceX or something. But thanks for coming along. Thanks for watching. There you go, Factorio.